This space is for people who are learning how to listen inward and trust themselves again. If that resonates, subscribe and stay a while. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the second episode of Unpacked Sessions. My name is Shayla, and I am so excited to be here with you all today. Before we get started, I did want to plug myself, I guess. Make sure you all follow my Instagram at Unpacked Sessions, as well as clicking the link to my Shopify to get access to my e-journal that I created, Unpacked Sessions, Conversations with Yourself. Definitely want to check out those two additional platforms that I have, and the link is in my bio on Instagram. I'm currently getting the process for getting fully approved on YouTube. And when that happens, I'll be able to put the link in the description for you guys. So we are going to pick up where we left off. This will be the second and last part in this, I guess, series of Unpacked Sessions. I don't really know how to describe it. The last time that I was with you all, I was reading the introduction to Bell Hooks's Ain't I a Woman? And I left off in the middle of an excerpt within the book. So I'm going to pick up there, finish this introduction, and providing my commentary. I really hope that you all will read this book. It is full of really good information. I am about halfway through it at this point, but I really just am learning so much as I'm reading it. And I thought it was important to bring it to my channel and let it be one of the first things that I discuss here. All right. So let's just jump right in. So we left off. I don't know how far we are. I'm also reading this on my iPad, so it's a little touch sensitive. But we left off on an excerpt from Tony Cade's article on the issues of roles. And it's one discussion of the sexist attitudes that prevailed in Black organizations during the 60s. So we were talking about how much of the civil rights movements pushed Black women to the back and pushed Black men to the forefront, allowing them to be acknowledged for much of the civil rights movement, which was taking away from the fact that there were so many Black women within the civil rights movement, within the Black Panther, that you have to do your own personal research on because it's not known about necessarily. So Tony Cade says, "It would seem that every organization you can name has had to struggle at one time or another with seemingly mutinous cadre of women getting salty about having to man the telephones or fix the coffee while the men wrote the position papers and decided on policy. Some groups condescendingly allotted 2 or 3 slots in the executive order to women. Others encouraged the sisters to form a separate caucus and work out something that wouldn't split the organization. Others got nasty and forced the women to storm out to organize separate workshops." So again, it is just highlighting the levels of sexism that Black women still face within our own community. And that is why I posed the 2 questions in the last episode. Are Black women a lone soldier? Because I am Black and I'm a woman. So not only am I fighting for racism to be eradicated, but I'm also fighting for sexism to no longer exist as well. And it's hard to sit with that in a lot of ways because, like I said in the last episode, while Black men understand what it's like to be Black, they will never understand what it's like to be a woman. And while white women understand what it's like to be a woman, they will never understand what it's like to be Black. And myself and other Black women always understand both. Over the years, things have sort of been cooled out, but I have yet to hear a cool-headed analysis of just what any particular group's stand is on the question. Invariably, I hear from some dude that black women must be supportive and patient so that black men can regain their manhood. The notion of womanhood, they argue, and only if pressed to address themselves to the notion do they think of it or argue, is dependent on his defining his manhood. So the shit goes on. It's crazy to think that back then, and I definitely feel like it's still relevant today, that black men somehow feel like the progression of black women keeps black men down, and that their manhood is somehow defined by a black woman's ability to step into her womanhood. And once again, I am not a man hater. I love and adore black men, truly. I really want better. I want better for y'all. But it's very contradicting and conflicting within myself to understand the struggles of black men to a certain extent, because just like I said earlier, I will never understand what it's like to be a man. Nor do I really want to, because I love being a woman, but I will never understand what it's like to be a black man. And I know it's hard. I know it can't be easy. However, I also don't feel like manhood has to inexcusably rain violence on women to or negate womanhood in order to exist. I don't know. That's just me personally. While some black women activists resisted the attempts of black men to coerce them into playing a secondary role in the movement, others, how do you even pronounce this word? Others capitulated to male demands for submission. So I'm assuming, I'm not going to look the word up. Forgive me. But with the context, we're going to assume that it means they gave in. What had begun as a movement to free all black people from racist oppression began a movement with its primary goal, the establishment of black male patriarchy. It exists. Whether black men want to admit it or not, it exists. And it has existed for a very long time. It's just there. It is not surprising that a movement so concerned with promoting the interests of black men should fail to draw any attention to the dual impact of sexist and racist oppression on the social status of black women. Black women have been asked to fade into the background to allow the spotlight to shine solely on black men. That the black woman was victimized by sexist and racist oppression was seen as insignificant, for women suffering, however great, could not take precedence over male pain. That quote alone is just, it sends chills through my body. Understanding my position as a black woman and other black women, and I can't speak for all black women, but a lot of times I do feel that when I have been in relation with black men, whether it's romantic, friendship, familial, there have been so many times that I have stuffed down what I am experiencing to soothe the ego and the pain of the man that I am in relation with. And I've also seen it done by the older black women in my life as well. And that statement aligns with so many dynamics within black culture and black society, the norms and unspoken rules that we have. I would dive deeper. I'll just give a perfect example of that, right? It's the same thing as when your family still allows that creepy uncle to still come around, knowing that he has caused issues and has harmed women and girls in the family, but they don't want to ostracize him because that might hurt his feelings. It's the same thing. And whether people, it is always that deep. That is patriarchy, black male. That is literally what that is. Ironically, while the recent women's movement called attention to the fact that black women were dually victimized by racist and sexist oppression, white feminists tended to romanticize the black female experience rather than discuss the negative impact of that oppression. When feminists acknowledge in one breath that black women are victimized, and in the same breath emphasize their strength, they imply that though black women are oppressed, they manage to circumvent the damaging impact of oppression by being strong. And that is simply not the case. Usually, when people talk about the strength of Black women, they are referring to the way in which they perceive Black women coping with oppression. They ignore the reality that to be strong in the face of oppression is not the same as overcoming oppression, that endurance is not to be confused with transformation. I posed the question when I read this because, again, my brain, right? I posed the question when I read this: is strength its own form of submission, right? Because choosing to bear it, is that my own, or is that our own form of just submitting to what's going on? And I resonate with that because there is so much strain in crying because things suck. I think just not acknowledging the pain and just going on is its own form of things at bay. I'm keeping things the way that they need to be, quote unquote. But actually being a disruptor, not being, quote unquote, strong, is actually where the strength lies of, hey, this isn't right. I'm actually not happy with the way this is going. I'm actually not enjoying this. I don't have to endure. I don't know. Just some thought, guys. Frequently, observers of the Black female experience confuse these issues. The tendency to romanticize the Black female experience that began in the feminist movement was reflected in the culture as a whole. The stereotypical image of the strong Black woman was no longer seen as dehumanizing. It became the new badge of Black female glory. When the women's movement was at its peak and white women were rejecting the role of burden bearer and sex object, Black women were celebrated for their unique devotion to the task of mothering, for their innate ability to bear tremendous burdens, and for their ever-increasing availability as sex object. I don't want to incite division on this channel, but I do feel very deeply that a lot of times you walk into certain positions because you're told that's who you are, right? So in the same breath of these people saying Black women are terrible mothers, nobody wants you in a sexual way, y'all are actually not hardworking, lazy, is the same way that it will be flipped to the benefit of whatever the situation is, right? They will tell you that you are a poor mother and then your ancestors raised their children, or people online even right now, if you're ever in trouble, find a Black woman. They will tell you you are not sexy, you are not beautiful, and yet we are quite literally the beauty standard, as you can see with the BBL wave that kind of came and went. The filler, the Black don't crack, it's all there. They are constantly telling on themselves. And once again, we are just supposed to bear it. And I don't feel like that is beneficial to us, nor it hasn't been, right? Any form of submission is just not beneficial to Black women at all. It's just not. And once again, the question becomes, are Black women lone soldiers? Nobody experiences what we experience. We appear to have been unanimously elected to take up where white women were leaving off. They got Miss Magazine, we got Essence. They got books discussing the negative impact of sexism on their lives. We got books arguing that Black women had nothing to gain by women's liberation. It's a lie. Black women were told that we should find our dignity not in liberation from sexist oppression, but in how well we could adapt and cope. We have been asked to stand up and be congratulated for being good little women and then told to sit down and shut up. No one bothered to discuss the way in which sexism operates both independently of and simultaneously with racism to oppress us. No other group in America so had their identity socialized out of existence as have Black women. We are rarely recognized as a group separate and distinct from Black men, or as a present part of the larger group, women, in this culture. When Black people are talked about, sexism militates against the acknowledgement of the interests of Black women. When women are talked about, Racism militates against a recognition of Black female interest. When Black people are talked about, the focus tends to be on Black men. And when women are talked about, the focus tends to be on white women. I wrote a paper my last semester of grad school for my, I think it was race, women, and gender class. It was something along the lines about how Black men and white women are one and the same. They're on the same street on opposite sides of the street, maybe going opposite ways. The same coin, different sides. Because a lot of times, both groups, their goal is to align themselves or be hierarchical over white men. While Black women, on the other hand, we just want equity and equality and understanding and liberation and the ability to just live. I don't want to be anything like a man, nor do I want to be white. And a lot of times I feel that white women and Black men see the power, quote unquote, that a lot of white men have structurally, right? Because I don't think it's natural. I think it's structurally done. It's ingrained in our structures in this country. So I think a lot of times they see that and they want that. And the closest way to get that is to align yourself with whiteness and white maleness specifically as much as you can, right? Let's see. Nowhere is there more evident than in the vast body of feminist literature. A case in point is the following passage describing white female reactions to male support of Black male suffrage in the 19th century, taken from William O'Neill's book, Everyone Was Brave. Their shocked disbelief that men would so humiliate them by supporting votes for Negroes, but not for women, demonstrated the limits of their sympathy for Black men, even as it drove these former allies further apart. This passage fails to accurately register the sexual and racial differentiation which together make for the exclusion of Black women. In the statement, their shocked disbelief that men should so humiliate them by supporting votes for Negroes, but not for women. The word men, in fact, refers only to white men. The word Negroes refers only to Black men. And the word women refers only to white women. The racial and sexual specificity of what is being referred to is conveniently left unacknowledged or even deliberately suppressed. Another example is from a more recent work by historian Barbara Berg, The Remembered Gate: Origins of American Feminism. Berg comments, in their fight for the vote, women both ignored and compromised the principles of feminism. The complexities of American society at the turn of the century induced the suffragists to change the basis of their demand for the franchise. The women Berg refers to are white women, yet she never states this. Throughout American history, the racial imperialism of whites has supported the custom of scholars using the term women, even if they are referring solely to the experience of white women. Yet, such a custom, whether practiced consciously or unconsciously, perpetuates racism in that it denies the existence of non-white women in America. It also perpetuates sexism in that it assumes that sexuality is the role, self-defining trait of white women and denies their racial identity. White women liberationists did not challenge this sextricist practice, they continued it. The most glaring example of their support of the exclusion of Black women was revealed when they drew analogies between women and Blacks, when what they were really comparing was the social status of white women with that of Black people. Like many people in our racist society, white feminists could feel perfectly comfortable writing books or articles on the woman question in which they drew analogies between women and Blacks, since analogies derive their power, their appeal, and their very reason for being from the sense of two disparate phenomena having been brought closer together. For white women to acknowledge the overlap between the terms Blacks and women, that is the existence of Black women, would render this analogy unnecessarily. By continuously making this analogy, they unwittingly, By continuously making this analogy, they unwittingly suggest that to them the term woman is synonymous with white women and the term Blacks synonymous with Black men. What this indicates is that there exists in the language of the very movement that is supposedly concerned with eliminating sexist oppression a sexist, racist attitude toward Black women. Sexist, racist attitudes are not merely present in the consciousness of men in American society. They surface in all our ways of thinking and being. All too frequently in the women's movement, it was assumed one could be free of sexist thinking by simply adopting the appropriate feminist rhetoric. It was further assumed that identifying oneself as oppressed freed one from being an oppressor. To a very grave extent, such thinking prevented white feminists from understanding and overcoming their own sexist, racist attitudes toward Black women. It is the same, literally, what this is saying. Because I'm a woman, I cannot be racist. And it's the same. Because I'm a woman, I can't be racist, but specifically, I want to emphasize because I'm a woman, I can't be anti-Black. I can't be oppressor because I too am oppressed. That is not realistic. Oppression and being able to oppress lies solely in your identities, right? Although I am a Black woman, right? Two identities right there that are the most marginalized. I too can still oppress people because of my age. So somebody younger than me, somebody super older than me, elderly, right? Depending on my job status, my class, depending on my education level. These are all things wherever you have privilege in your identities are the ways that you are able to oppress other people, right? So I'm a Black woman. I cannot oppress men and I cannot oppress white women. But because I am 27, I can oppress a child. I can, because I have 2 degrees. Somebody who's does not have that, can I have privilege over them in that and can execute oppression over them. So we have to be mindful, right? Just because you hold certain identities does not make you incapable of being oppressive to people. The same goes, oh, my neighbors are Black, so I can't be racist. No, that's just not how it works. So, jumping forward, it says, instead, the great majority of Black women allied themselves with Black patriarchy they believe would protect their interests. Right? So it got to a point where Black women we see how white women are moving. They are extremely racist. So at least Black men understand what it's like to be Black, and we don't have to necessarily worry about the racial context of oppression, and they'll be able to protect us. So we thought, right? Just for Black men to turn around and carry on a lot of those same oppressive behaviors. A few Black women chose to ally themselves with the feminist movement. Those who dared to speak publicly in support of women's rights were attacked and criticized. Other Black women found themselves in limbo, not wanting to ally themselves with sexist Black men or racist white women. That Black women did not collectively rally against the exclusion of our interests by both groups was an indication that sexist, racist socialization had effectively brainwashed us to feel that our interests were not worth fighting for, to believe that the only option available to us was submission to the terms of others. We did not challenge, question, or critique. We reacted. Many Black women denounce women's liberation as white female foolishness, right? A lot of times, too, when I do say that I am a Black feminist, I emphasize the Black because I feel like years ago I was first just saying that I'm a feminist, but it's important that people know that I am a Black feminist, right? Because the feminist movement was corrupt in a lot of ways to emphasize the issues of white women without considering Black women. And the proof is in the pudding. The proof is here. So it's important that I emphasize and align myself with what feels best. Others reacted to white female racism by starting Black feminist groups. While we denounced male concepts of Black macho as disgusting and offensive, we did not talk about ourselves, about being Black women, about what it means to be the victims of sexist, racist oppression. The most notable attempt by Black women to articulate their experiences their attitudes, women's role in society, and the impact of sexism on their lives was the anthology The Black Woman, edited by Tony Cade. The dialogue ended there. The growing demand for literature about women created a market in which almost anything would sell or at least receive some attention. This was particularly the case with literature about Black women. The bulk of literature on Black women that emerged as a consequence of the demanding market was thoroughly laden with sexist, racist assumptions. Black men who chose to write about Black women did so in a predictably sexist manner. Many anthologies appeared with collections of material drawn from the writings of 19th century Black women. These works were usually edited by white people. Gerda Lerner, a white woman born in Austria, edited Black Women in White America, a documentary history, and received a generous grant to aid her scholarship. While I think that the collection is an important work, this is Bell Hooks' words. It is significant that in our society, white women are given grant money to do research on Black women, but I can find no instance where Black women have received funds to research white women's history. It doesn't make sense, guys. None of it makes sense. How can we not address the fact that Black women are single-handedly one of the only groups of women that experience this level of sexism and racism compared to other groups? She begins to talk about Michelle Wallace's book, Black Macho and the Myth of the Superwoman. It was heralded as the definitive feminist book on Black women. Gloria Steinem is quoted on the cover as saying, "What sexual politics was to the 70s, Michelle Wallace's book could be to the 80s. She crosses the sex-race barrier to make every reader understand the political and intimate truths of growing up Black and female in America." Now, readers of Black Macho and the Myth of the Superwoman were primarily interested in the author's comments about Black male sexuality, which comprised the main body of her book. Her short critique of the Black female slave experience and their characteristic passive acceptance of sexism was largely ignored. Although the women's movement motivated hundreds of women to write on the woman question, it failed to generate in-depth critical analysis of the Black female experience. Most feminists assume that problems Black women faced were caused by racism, not sexism. The assumption that we can divorce the issue of sex or sex from race has so clouded the vision of American thinkers and writers on the woman question that most discussions of sexist oppression or woman's place in society are distorted, biased, and inaccurate. We cannot form an accurate picture of women's status by simply calling attention to the role assigned females under patriarchy. More specifically, we cannot form an accurate picture of the status of Black women by simply focusing on racial hierarchies. So that's pretty much the end of the introduction. She then starts to talk about the research she did for the book overall, but the introduction really highlights how we got to this point of discussing, it highlights how she got to the point of wanting to discuss the role of sexism and racism within the culture of Black women. Like I said earlier, this is a phenomenal book. I am going to finish it. It is a goal of mine. So I'm so glad that I was able to start it at the beginning of the year. And I'm so glad that I was able to share the introduction with you all. Another book that I am going to talk about that kind of aligns with this, and also was a part of my journey in becoming a Black feminist, is Hood Feminism. I am going to talk about that book probably so much on this journal, podcast, whatever you want to call it, I guess. But I do look forward to connecting with you all on next week's episode. Make sure you all follow my Instagram at Unpacked Sessions, and make sure you all check out my e-journal, Unpacked Sessions Conversations with Yourself. I'm definitely looking forward to next week's episode. I will have a new topic and we will be switching gears. All right, you all. I will see you all later. Bye.